alarm or something like that and lights out. Or
Hi, and welcome to Unicorn Dispatch Live with your host, Bryson Bork, cutting off Eric as he was about to talk about me being struck by lightning. I am not struck by lightning. The reference there is to the stormy weather we are having here in the Tampa, St. Pete area in Florida. However, that has nothing to do with the show, other than Eric also happens to live nearby and is joining us from Know Before.
Right. Great to be here, Bryson. Always a pleasure when we can chat, my friend.
I think that wins for the most random introduction ever because you were going while I pressed the button. I'm like, dude, we're about
Yeah.
to go live. What are you doing?
Yeah. No, not a problem. Not a problem. So here we are.
Eric, why don't you give the folks at home a quick recap on the mistakes in life that led you to this webinar?
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. When I was but a wee child, no, I guess we'll start when I got into IT. I was active duty Navy for a while, got out, got into IT a little bit, worked in some different places, worked in medical, things like that, went through the ranks, where we've all kind of played our games. I was the security manager for the 2nd Regional Cyber Center, which was a U.S. Army institution. Hey now, but I did work for the Army for about 10 years. We did the network infrastructure across North America for all the post camps and stations. Got to do some fun stuff with that. One thing leads to another. I got pulled into ISC Squared where I worked for a couple of years. And then when that ending up, lo and behold, I joined Nobi for about 10 years ago on this job that I had no idea what the hell I was doing. And here I am 10 years later, still have no idea what the hell I'm doing.
That is every job I've ever had. Is I didn't know most of it. No, actually, the best one, this is not made up. This is not exaggerated at all. My first job out of the Army, I didn't even know the job title in the interview. And I told them that. I'm like, I don't even know what this means. And they were like, you're perfect for it. You're good to go. And I think the takeaway for everybody at home, because the question that comes up a lot is, what do I need to do to get XYZ? What do I need to do these things? And one of them is having no fear that be smart enough, be learned enough, be networked enough that you can learn on the fly, because most jobs require you to learn on the fly anyway. And in fact, in most jobs, and I think this is more, let's say more mid-career, it's harder to do this entry level. So let's be fair. Mid-career jobs, if you know everything that you're doing, you're bored.
Yeah.
And to be challenged means you need to be learning. And that means you need to not know what the hell is going on sometimes.
Yep. Uncomfortable, man. I mean, nothing good comes from comfortable situations over and over again. That's not how we grow. That's not how we do things. And frankly, I mean, we're in an industry that nobody's going to know everything, and it moves so damn fast. Everybody's going to have to start off like that and try to figure it out. So yeah, absolutely true. Love it. Like I said, I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, though.
I argue that is just about anybody. You never know what you want to be when you grow up, no matter what age you are.
Yep. I'm hoping for retirement, but still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So here we are.
So the title of today's webinar is Oops, That Was AI Augmented Social Engineering. What are we talking about here? I don't think I see any Britney Spears in our future.
Yeah, no. It's basically like I love AI. I love and hate AI. I also love and hate social engineering. And I'm fascinated by the way that things have been progressing and the bad actors are using it against people, with the psychology and the technical tools that are kind of running with that too. And so, this is a good time to talk about that and where it's going and how it's going to be effective, I think, against employees and people at home too. That's the big thing. Like, it's not just happening for businesses, like the kidnapping scams and all that kind of crap that are going on. That's brutal, and it's happening all the time. So I think this is a great topic for us to talk about.
All right. So why don't we start with what is social engineering? And for those of you who are like, I already know what that is, I think this is important because Folks have different definitions of things. Level
Yeah.
setting, that is good. And I think there's also, in defining it, we can touch on some of the ethics of the discipline, because in one way, it's looking at it is the dark art of human manipulation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean that kind of summarizes it there too. I like to think of it as kind of what you just said, but it's using our humanity against us a lot of times. And here's the thing, like we see people do it for evil. Absolutely, right? That's what we're talking about when we're talking about this here. It's social engineers going out attacking companies. But honestly, we use a form of social engineering in everything we do every day when we're talking to other people and we're in the workplace and we're dealing with that kind of stuff. Like that's just it's how we talk to each other. I mean, if you think about it, when you talk to other people, do you talk to everybody exactly the same? If you know them, probably not. There's going to be nuances in how you talk to that person based on what they've responded to favorably in the past or disfavorably. So there are changes in how we do that. That's our humanity. And what's happened is over the years, people have gotten really good at that. People have gotten really good at using that. And I hate to say it, but it's a lot of the same skills that you're going to see in sales that are used in these kinds of attacks, right? Like used car salespeople, they use these tactics. Marketing uses these tactics. It's basically exploiting our humanity to get our attention, or in the case of like what we're talking about here, doing something that's not good for them. In other words, clicking links, transferring money, giving up information, taking these things and doing something that's not generally a positive outcome.
So why do we care?
Yeah, why do we care?
Why
Well,
do we care?
yeah.
So
So
there's
believe
bad
it,
people doing bad
yeah, yeah,
things.
yeah,
Welcome to the world.
yeah.
Why do we care?
Yeah, well, I'm a trooper on that. I don't like bad people doing bad things to people in general. But like as far as our industry goes, what got me into this was I'm a very technical person. I'm a geek. I have little single board computers and crap scattered around me, right? Throughout my career, what I found is the problems I was running into within organizations, like the breaches, all seem to be starting with the basic old phishing email, which is unbelievably still incredibly common and useful and impactful all of these years later. But I realized that, okay, wait a minute, this kind of stuff happening to people is detrimental to organizations. And so if I'm a security person, I want to know that because the number one way that bad actors gain initial network access these days, and it has been for a while, is through social engineering. And that's through phishing, through smishing, the text message stuff, right? The vishing, the voice calls, all of that stuff, and even being used together is how the bad actors are getting the initial network access. And then they use all the really cool tools and do the pivoting and do all that stuff within the networks. But man, everybody's nightmares seem to start from a human interaction, unfortunately.
However, Mythos, Anthropic, and the Vuln
Yeah.
apocalypse have been what's been getting all of the attention. Eric, should we be changing our minds on this? Are you wrong, or is what you said old hat?
No, I think it continues to show itself. Now, mythos and all that, yeah, that's absolutely something to be afraid of. I mean, AI is cool as hell, and we're finding all of these vulnerabilities and we're finding all of this kind of stuff, and it is kind of scary. So that doesn't mean we need to drop that, not by any means, but the emails are still rolling in and breaches are still occurring. You know what I found? I got another notification today about a medical facility that got breached with my information. I was in the Carnival Cruise Lines one. I got another one today. It's like over and over and over again. But every time I look into those stories, it's not taking advantage of anything but maybe Fortinet firewalls. Sorry, Fortinet. But
Fortinet.
yeah, yeah, poor Fortinet. But it's almost always some other way that they get in, and it's impacting me personally. It pisses me off, frankly. I mean, I don't know how many credit monitoring services I can have at a time, but I think I'm on my way to figuring it out. We'll see. At some point in time, they're going to be like, that's just too many, right? But yeah, I mean, I think we absolutely have to deal with the vulnerabilities that are being found and exploited. And frankly, it's happening at a faster pace than ever. People are still doing the monthly patching sort of thing, which is going to put them at a disadvantage. So yeah, our internet facing stuff is absolutely at risk with this stuff. Right. But but here's the thing. I mean, it also impacts us within the organization afterwards behind the perimeter. In other words, they get in with that initial network access, and those vulnerabilities that are being found by this stuff are also something that is being used within. So yeah, we can never stop looking at these kind of vulnerabilities there in the AI, but I don't think we ever want to stop concentrating on the people problem, the human side.
I think my favorite example of that is the MGM hack.
Yeah.
Are you able to recap it?
Yeah, well, okay. So MGM hack, the Qantas one is actually one of my favorites, and the reason Qantas was again a call to the help desk, right? How many times have we heard this, right? Scattered spider call to the help desk, and basically talking someone into resetting email accounts and MFA on a new device through the help desk, social engineering, boom. Next thing you know, they have access. And one of the worst things a social engineer can do is get a hold of a legitimate email account that's internal, because there's a level of trust that flows with that. Same sort of thing has happened over and over again with the different groups. It always starts with either phishing or a phone call these days, frankly. I believe MGM was the same sort of deal.
Yeah, so I like the MGM story because if you haven't heard, this goes back to Wendy Nather in 2013. She talked about the cyber poverty line, which I think is a really important foundational understanding of cybersecurity. I modify it in that we have the haves, the have-nots, and the kind of haves. And the kind of haves are really where we have to focus. The have-nots are a different challenge, a problem. The haves, they have money, they have the resources. And wouldn't you know it, there's a direct correlation between having a lot of money and what you can spend and apply for cybersecurity. Shocking, I know, right?
Yeah.
The kind of haves are the ones where they're not in that space, and they have to prioritize and think, what can I afford to not having a perfect cybersecurity, right? I can't check all of the magic quadrants for Gartner. I have to pick a few that I think are optimal for me. And the reason I like MGM is in finance. And finance has the budgets of small countries. For any of you who have ever seen an Ocean's 11, 12, 13, or 8 movie, there's a reason that the entire movie is so like such a thing, because they're breaking into a casino. In that case, it's physical security, although they do use some social engineering tactics. And so MGM is that equivalent where some teenagers, they were teenagers out of England, use social engineering techniques to be able to get access into the equivalent of like the casino, right? That's a finance with a lot of money. And that's what I like about it. And then you tie it back to the fact that this stuff works in the real world. So I was at the Louvre, and the Louvre, right, is I think the largest art museum in the world. Priceless art, jewels, all of those things. I sort of vaguely remembered it, but do you remember there was a heist at the Louvre a few years ago? Do you know how they did it?
Didn't they crawl through a like a window or something like that?
Basically, 4 guys just wore vests, just orange like hazard vests, so they looked official. Took one of those pneumatic like lifts, went up to a window, drilled through the window, climbed through the window while it was open. It was open because they knew the alarm systems would be disabled because it was open. And there are people in there, and the people are all like, is this an act? What's going on? The staff, meanwhile, are like, we're not trained for this shit. We're not doing anything. So the staff just all stood by there. They walked up, they picked the right jewels, they climbed out the window, and then you know how they sped away? On scooters, because there's traffic so awful. So
brilliant. Yeah.
One of the most secure facilities sort of in the world with priceless art, was defeated by 4 guys drilling a hole during daylight in front of people and walking out with it and then getting away on electric scooters. That is what social engineering represents, is you can build the wall, the moat, have the archers, and social engineering allows everybody to just go right through that like it's not there.
Yep. Confidence in a clipboard will get you just about anywhere, right? If you look on YouTube and look at some of the high vis vest things in social engineering, you'll see all kinds of examples of guys showing up at places with a ladder over their shoulder and, the bright vests and just walking through the front door because everyone assumes, well, why the hell else would they be here if they're not official? Why are they dressed up like that? And it's an assumption thing. And again, that's a human thing that we do. But yeah, YouTube is littered with stuff like that, and that's definitely a part of it. The in-person stuff, I love it. I think it's great. I really do. Like, I really admire social engineers that do this for a living. I could not do that. I can't even do it over the phone because I'm not the kind of person that pushes, right? Like if somebody says no, I don't like to push them. And Bryson, you've been to DEF CON, time and time again, right?
Once or twice.
Yeah. So, you go to the SE community or whatever it's called these days, the SE village, the old villages, and you see them live vishing people from within a booth in front of all these other people. And you can hear how they're pushing them to get answers and how people react to that. It's fascinating to me to see how people react to that and how they just keep giving answers to things when I'm rooting for them to hang up, right? Like I'm cringing over there in the corner because these people are like, yeah, that doesn't matter. Well, what about this? What about that? What kind of badges do you use? And people are like, and they get confused and they start giving out all this crazy information, right? That is a great example of it that I love to go there just for that, but it makes me so damn cringy. And that's all part of it though, right? Exploiting weakness in people, I suppose, in many cases, or ego. It can be ego too.
Yeah, on that, statistically, white men are some of the easiest to social engineer because of, well, lots of reasons. I'll let you add to any of that you want, but I think that's an interesting concept in cybersecurity.
Yeah, and we're confident in our knowledge. And there's the different tiers of things there where you know what you don't know and all that kind of good stuff, right? And a lot of us we don't know what we don't know, which makes us really easy there. We are so confident in the wrong things that we end up taking risks we shouldn't or doing things we shouldn't just because of our egos, because of the way we are. And honestly, folks have had, hundreds, thousands of years to learn how human dynamics work. It's been going on since scams forever and ever and ever, and they've refined it to the point now that it's not hard for them to do, frankly. Again, I'm fascinated by it. I know some people in the industry that do social engineering. I watch certain things like years back, there was a National Geographic documentary. It was, I think it was National Geographic Breakthrough. And it had people like Jason E. Street and lots of other people in there. Dave Kennedy was in there in this documentary. And he goes to these banks, and I think it was UAE. This is Jason. He walks in the front door with some USB drives, and he's like, hey, I need to do some updates. And wanders over there behind the counter, and he's just plugging in these USB drives. And people are like, okay, 2 out of the 3 banks that they went after just let them back there. Only one of them pushed back and said, who the hell are you? And what's going on? We need to confirm this with the main office. But that's just it. You stroll in, you're confident, you do your thing. But people in general, and it doesn't always matter culture or any of that, people are susceptible to the same things, right?
I posted a link for Jason Street.
Yeah.
For those of you hacking Dave Kennedy, Trusted Stack Binary Defense. I think we can find him pretty easily as well. All right, so what's artificial intelligence doing to change the game?
Yeah, well, we all know about deepfakes, right? And I've actually been playing with deepfakes. I started with Deepfakes Live about 5 years ago, I think, when I was playing around with doing deepfakes, and it took pretty much all day to do a even halfway decent deepfake, but it was still incredibly limited. Well, with the tools that they have today, it's a whole lot easier to do that. But we've seen deepfakes used in all kinds of different scams, audio, video. They actually, there is some talk that perhaps in that the Qantas attack, where Scattered Spider went after Qantas, that they used some AI audio to make them sound perhaps more Australian, to put people off their guard a little bit. You want the familiarity and the similarities. But we see it a lot in other areas too. And the fact is, it's so easy to do these days. I did a talk for a fraud conference up in New York City earlier in the year, and they had me do a deep fake of the CEO of this company that was putting this thing on, and I used 16 seconds of audio from a YouTube video and a still picture to make a pretty darn convincing video of him saying, "Hey, go ahead and wire Eric the $50,000 for showing up. Thanks for being here." Right? It took almost nothing, and it was free. A lot of the stuff I did here on my server at the house, I have a rack server with some AI cards in it, so I built that out of there. But 16 seconds of audio to clone his voice and even a lot of his verbal mannerisms. It's amazing what we're doing these days. So what do? You get a call from someone in authority, an executive, says, "Hey, sending you an email right now. I need to take care of this thing ASAP." You get an email that says, "We need to wire money, super hush hush. Don't talk to anyone about it. It's for an acquisition." And if you're in the role that kind of does that kind of stuff, I mean, why would you second guess that? If the boss called you and said, "I'm sending you this thing," and you recognize their voice, well, why would you second guess a follow-up email? There's also that instance, I'm sure you saw it, the $25 million wired out on a Zoom call. I thought that was fascinating. Oh my God. Yeah, it was in Japan. And basically what they did, this was some real like Ocean's 11 crap here. I thought it was fascinating that they did this. They did a Zoom call that was entirely deep fakes, but they weren't live deep fakes. They scripted this call and set it all up, made these deep fakes of these executives, and then they had the one other guy on the call. And I always like to think this is like the kind of call that I love to be on, where you don't do anything but listen in, right? So these executives are having this scripted conversation with deepfakes, and then they cut it off early. And we've all been on those kind of calls, right? They cut it off early, and they basically turn around and they reach out to this other person who had no interaction, was just listening, and says, "Look, we're not going to go through the trouble of spinning up a new link and getting it out to everybody. You heard us talking about this thing. I just need you to wire that money we were talking about." And they wired out $25 million due to that. And I thought, damn it, that was brilliant. And that wasn't even using real-time deep fakes, right? Freaking brilliant.
So beyond deep fakes, what else do we need to be thinking about?
Well, some of the stuff we're seeing, definitely like on the email side, we're seeing a lot more polymorphic phishing. In other words,
Hold
every
on.
email that comes
Polymorphic phishing? I know polymorphic
yep.
malware. You're going to have to explain polymorphic.
Yep. On my way, Bryson. Okay. Polymorphic phishing, basically what it does is it's tweaking something in each and every email that goes out in a campaign so it's different. Could be the subject line, could be in the body, it could even be any attachments or things like that, the payload that's with them. And it changes every time. So what this does is it throws a little bit of a wrench in our typical email filtering stuff that looks off patterns and things like that. Even if you have your end users that are reporting something and say, "Hey, I got this fish," and you go back and you go, "Okay, wait a minute. Looks like part of a campaign. We're going to pull that off the mail servers." Well, if it doesn't match, it's not there. And so it helps get around those filters a lot more. And it truly helps get into the inbox a lot more than it did. And Our threat teams, I was talking to one of the guys on the threat labs team over here because we do an email filtering product as well as know before. He was saying that their average campaign size used to be about 10 emails per campaign. So the bad actors would throw out like 10 of these at a company at one time that were all the same. So if you report one and you catch it, you pull it awesome. Well, he was saying, and this was last year, they were down to about 1.8 on average. So in other words, almost every email was unique from the other ones in the campaign when targeting the company. And that's being done not by somebody sitting there and typing these out every time. It's being done through AI. And, we see those kinds of changes. We see the volume of phishing and attacks are increasing. When was the last time you got something with bad grammar and spelling, right? We know that that's long gone. And in the dark web, there actually used to be services where you could hire people to fix your grammar and spelling, and they would guarantee improved results from your phishing campaigns. Now it's just toss that bad boy in Claude or whatever, or through a lot of these phishing as a service platforms, it's offered right then and there to help either develop stuff or generate emails through AI or change them, tweak them a little bit. That's all being part of the product now, even on the lower end phishing as a service groups.
I always like to when I teach phishing, show folks a classic Nigerian scam email
Yeah.
that has the bad grammar, that has the non-native English. And I always point out to them, like, what if I told you this person spoke perfect English? And in fact, because most foreign trained folks in English actually understand the rules of grammar, like none of us
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
explain what a preposition is or what
Yeah.
pluperfect
Yeah.
tense is, but they know it. And that they intentionally do that. And then I use that as a way to then illustrate the psychological components in the email. The first being is realizing a poorly written email that's intentionally poorly written is SEO. And what's the SEO for?
Mm-hmm.
It's SEO for dumb.
Yeah.
Because if you are dumb enough to believe it, you're dumb enough to give me your social security and your bank account within the next email. That's who I'm targeting, right? And so
Yeah.
recognizing that these things have always been crafted to the target is important. And one of the things that I've been seeing for several years, because it was like AI and offense, AI and offense. Well,
Yeah.
we now truly do have AI and offense, but previously it was mostly in this, where they were using artificial intelligence to write emails in the native language, right? Don't just
Mm-hmm.
think English, think of any native language, because that's pretty good. And the second is I can now spearfish at scale because
Yeah.
AI allows me to build a correlated data set, right? Like I can sweep LinkedIn for your latest updates, your job, your relationships. So that's a form of knowledge, and I can pull other things. And now I can have it automatically pull from that corpus of information, open source intelligence, and craft individual phishing emails like what would traditionally have been a person driving a spearfish.
Yeah, yeah, and they used to target like it was the whaling, it was the big deal because you had to put a lot of time and effort into it. Where nowadays that's all much more attainable, and it's almost a commodity thing, right? There is so much information about us out there, Bryson. I know you know it. OSINT is it's amazing what you can pull out of people that's not even dark web information, right? You want someone's address and there are things you can do to get information about people from county websites, state websites, all that kind of stuff. It's out there if you know where to look for it. Well, they're using the AI to gather this. And I like to tell people, like, they can build a dossier on a person that the CIA would have been proud of, 25, 30 years ago. And it's not that much work anymore. So by doing that, by building the more targeted ones like you're talking about, you go from going after executive leadership to sliding down the org chart a little bit to these other people. But again, once you're in through one of those people, a lot of bad things can happen, even through the people that you don't necessarily always think of as being a huge threat in the organization.
Yeah, it's when you mentioned the CIA, I'll generalize it. I've when I talk about LinkedIn, the amount of information that's available on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, just 15 years ago would have been, I mean, so many months of work in the intelligence community to
Yeah.
build that level of a targeting dossier. Because people, and the funniest part about it is people volunteer this information. And
Yeah.
then taking it out of the social engineering aspect, one of the other things I like to point out for folks is because most of the defensive tools that we put into place, right, it isn't about the tool. It is the human that configures the tool, and then it is the
Yeah.
tool that alerts the human to the behavior, which is the detection part of the NIST CSF phases, which is most of cybersecurity. So most of cybersecurity is still people led.
Yeah.
Artificial intelligence ain't changing that. It's still going to be a human telling AI to do something and then checking the AI output from release to then operation as well. The other thing, when you mentioned polymorphic email, the way I summarized that in my head, that's artificial intelligence against artificial intelligence. I'm
Hmm.
using AI to create these different things that's trying to get through a AI filter on the other end.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the things I really like, and I'm not trying to plug us or anything, but one of the things I really do like about our approach to the email security and others as well, if they do this, is you're looking at the messages not for common strings or things we're used to seeing and all that, but actually looking at the context of the message instead. Like, is it asking them to do something? And if so, what's it asking them to do? Hey, this tends to be a dangerous sort of thing. So you can flag it, you can hold it, you can do all kinds of stuff with that. But using AI to go further than just what we've done in the past, which is looking for certain patterns or words or things like that, and actually looking at the context of the message helps get around that because there's only so many words you can use in the thing to say, hey, I want you to wire me a bunch of money, or you need to go log into this website that is totally not the right website and we're going to steal your credentials, right?
So moving a little bit from great, they're able to do bad things we care about. Jeffrey asks, how can organizations train their users on identifying a deep fake on a video call?
Well, I'd say it's not as easy as it used to be. Plain and simple, trust nothing. Maybe I'm old and paranoid, Bryson. I don't know. Maybe that's what happens to us, but I trust nothing, even if I'm looking at it. And there used to be tricks where you could have them take their hand and wave it in front of their face, and there would be artifacts, and you could see stuff like that. We're at the point now that doesn't happen. Okay. It's just not there. We've absolutely hit that spot. We, we see this being used and I've heard of it in things like the North Korean employee scams. Are you familiar with those a little bit, Bryson?
No, I mean, I know
So,
about the employment aspect.
yeah. So what they'll do is they'll try to get jobs, especially high paying jobs within organizations. And the idea is they hold those jobs, those remote jobs, as long as they can, funnel money back into the regime up there, right? But the interview process, we've seen them use AI to modify a photo to more closely match a profile that they stole. And then getting on the Zoom call, those things can be tweaked a little bit as well. So that is something that they love to do. And they get into organizations. They're not even necessarily trying to steal anything from the organization. They're just holding on. So they'll have very smart people do the interviews. They generally tend to interview very well. They may have somebody researching off to the side while they're answering these technical questions. They get in there, and then a lot of times what will happen is they'll hand it off to a lower level person while they go get another job, essentially. And that person will hold on to it until finally they end up getting fired. This happens all the time. And if you go out there and you search for things like North Korean employment scammers, you'll see this stuff happens all the time out there. It's a big money maker for North Korea to be able to do that. But they're absolutely using deepfakes or using AI to look into stuff to get that done. And again, one of the things we would ask them to do is wave your face across or your hand across your face and look for those artifacts. One of the other things you can do, which ironically is quite funny in my opinion, is ask them exactly how fat is the supreme leader. And they'll generally end it right there, right? Like that's just done. They're not going to say anything bad about them. So if you are doing interviews, that may be a good question to ask people.
I was going to use that because I read that example where
Yeah.
they asked the candidate to insult the supreme leader, and he just
Yep.
cut out
That ends it.
because even they're so paranoid, and rightfully so, probably,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
that that's just the safest choice to do it. Also, it goes back to when we talk about the motives of different adversarial nation state actors. The primary one for the DPRK is cash.
Yeah.
As a hermit country with broader goals, going all the way back to the Soviet Union, you need hard currency. And whatever the currency is of North Korea, it doesn't matter because it isn't actually currency outside of that. You need hard currency to be able to conduct and fund your military operations. Going back to Jeffrey's question, to what the takeaway here
Yeah.
is, it is nearly impossible to identify anything AI generated. It is so
Yeah.
good, whether it is audio, whether it is pictures, whether it is video. They now have reached a quality that you can't trust your eyes. Corollary to that is this is now becoming a problem in the justice system because
Oh,
the
yeah.
chain of custody for what is digital evidence now is even more important because digital evidence can be faked to the point that you can't distinguish it. So the counsel that I give is you need a prescribed code or password exchange, like we used to
Mm-hmm.
do in the Army when somebody's approaching your position. And obviously that will have to be rotated. So you essentially need this other layer of social identification and authorization, the way that we traditionally do with logging in, to be able to identify where you are seeing those kinds of things. But looking at it just as a static or a video, there is no way to be able to ascertain that.
Yeah, you need to really pay attention to, or people need to really pay attention to what the ask is, what's happening within that, like what's going on, more than what you're seeing or hearing. You really got to pay attention to what's happening. If somebody's asking you to do something weird, something you've never done before, that $25 million example that I had there, I think policy comes into place there. Had they had a policy that said, if you receive a request, you confirm it through an out of band channel, right? Whether it be a phone call or a text message, obviously not to a number that's in that email or the message or whatever you're getting, but to a known good number. That policy is there. That would have saved them 25 million. I've been saying that for years, that would have been saving a lot of the money that's going out in these BEC scams, is just having a policy like that. Now you have to have leadership involved because somebody's going to call them or contact them. It's going to take some time. So there need to be lines drawn where something is worth the risk. And leadership can't be biting the heads off of anyone that calls and says, hey, boss, just want to make sure that was you. Okay, cool. Right? But if you think about what that would have saved over the years in BEC money lost, it's amazing. But nobody wants to do that, I guess.
So, follow up to our DPRA question: is it viable that security teams work alongside with human resources on validating current employees' true identity to weed out any nation state actor impersonating an actual employee?
I say 100%, especially in the higher level jobs and especially in remote positions. Because obviously nobody's going to deep fake their own butt coming in, with their face printed on a popsicle stick, like, hey, it's me. That ain't going to happen in the local ones. But when it comes to remote positions, absolutely. Now, I don't know if they have a threshold of a salary that they spend the time on to get employed, or whether it could just be a normal sales or marketing person. I don't know where that threshold might be, but I honestly think security really needs to be looking into that. You need to be doing background checks, although a lot of times they'll use a stolen identity that will pass background checks. I've seen that happen before. I saw one of those guys who went through 4 different Zoom calls in discussions during the interview process, and still ended up being hired because they're just damn good at what they're doing. But yeah, security teams need to be cautious, and you need to watch what they're doing. So a lot of times, part of that North Korean scam is they'll get the remote job and then they'll say something like, oh, I need you to send it to a different address. I'm moving to somewhere else. And so they'll have like the laptop shipped somewhere else. Well, they pick it up, they take it down, or somebody does. And there's been several apartments and places that have been busted that are laptop farms. And so they plug these things in, they get online, they use something like a Pi VPN to do remote access into these laptops that are connected now to the corporate networks. And you don't really see it. It just looks like a keyboard and mouse working. But then that's how they do their work. So sometimes though weird stuff will happen, weird login times, stuff like that that they're doing, and sometimes they'll get a little bit greedy and try to go for the gold, and then you can spot them. But you really got to keep an eye open for things like that, which is crazy because how the hell do you spot that?
So obviously involving HR in is a good way to correlate inside the company. As Eric noted, your average background check, though, is most likely not going to turn up this kind of behavior.
Hmm.
In fact, I thought about giving a talk a number of years ago to talk about what's called how to create actors on stage. So what that means is if I am going to be somebody else, there are certain things that I need to do to be able to pull that off. I actually submitted this as a talk for the first Cyber WarCon whenever John Hultquist launched that, and it wasn't accepted. And so I've never put the talk together. But what I would talk about is the details of the financial, the technical, and a number of other regulatory pieces, because different countries actually are more friendly to some things,
Yeah.
to how you would create what we would call an on-stage presence. So just taking the metaphor, it's the second somebody walks back from the curtain and is on stage, how do I make them believable as that actor? And that was the talk that I have not given.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Myself and a guy named Javad Malik had actually submitted a talk for RSA that didn't get picked up. And we actually wanted to see how people would treat you differently with different titles. And it didn't get picked up, made me kind of sad. Although I did become an ordained minister out of the deal and a Scottish lord. So technically, I'm a Scottish lord and an ordained minister. I think he got his online PhD, and we were going to actually see like what would happen if you're calling up and trying to get plane tickets changed or something like that. Based on the different titles you use and how people treat you, is a little bit of a social engineering experiment. I'm sad that never went through, but either way, if you want to get married, I can do it. I mean, I think you already are, but if you want to renew your vows, I can do that for you here in the state of Florida, Bryson.
I
It's,
would, well, I'm not married, first
oh,
point,
okay. I thought,
but thank you. I will let you know when I need to renew my vows.
it's,
Um, Probably the closest one I'm to is for a vow of silence. But I think your Lord one would not work very well because there are certain titles, and I
yeah,
can speak to this at some point for myself, where you would never make the call yourself.
yeah.
You would have
Although,
somebody else calling upon your behalf of the great Lord Erich Kron.
but I have actually seen it in the drop downs for the prefixes for people, and I have selected it just for the hell of it. So, good times.
How,
Didn't get
how,
me
how,
anything
how does
special
how
though.
does that work in economy class?
Yeah. Didn't do a damn thing for me, to be honest with you. But it is what it is. It's kind of fun to do that. But you know what? There's so much that happens with people and perceptions based on that, right? And you don't even have to necessarily like have really good stuff. That's the thing about deepfakes. Yes, they've gotten to the point that you can hardly tell anymore. But honestly, a lot of times in the past, whether it's just people doing voice phishing as an individual without any AI enhancements or using AI enhancements, if you get in there and the person is already somewhat convinced that that's who they're talking to or that's who they're dealing with, whether it be through caller ID saying it's a CEO or not, you forgive things that would otherwise stand out to you if you're skeptical about it, right? Like the old trick is to step back and be like, "Oh my gosh, it's sorry it's so noisy, I'm at the airport, blah blah blah." And people will be like, "Oh, okay." And they'll forgive the fact that it sounds weird even with the early deep fakes, because, oh, well, if they're already convinced, we have our biases, and this just confirms our bias that we already had about that. And I think that's a very interesting play in this as well when it comes to social engineering and deep fakes. And, people have freaked out about deep fakes for a long time. And honestly, the underlying scams are the same. And there's been voice actors doing it. It's just now coming down to the masses where you don't have to be all technical or super skilled to be able to pull it off anymore.
It's funny. I did an interview with Donnie over, I think it was 2018 at CNN. We were talking about deepfakes. And at the time, it was within the context of the Russian meddling in the US election in 2016. In 2018, US Cyber Command negated that problem by what they call persistent engagement, which is they fucked up the Russians in Leningrad. And yeah, I don't know if that dates me. I grew up in the Soviet Union. I don't know if it's still called Leningrad. So St. Petersburg, Leningrad.
Right, right.
That's how I grew up with it. And where was I going with that? And my point to Donnie was, I think anybody, because then there were videos where like Nancy Pelosi was like slurring, and they were like changing the speed of it, things like that. And my point was, deep fakes are going to reinforce the beliefs you already have.
Yep.
So inherently, because something just isn't going to add up, right? Nobody is doing something that out of character. Nobody is in a position of power who's that much whatever that's in the public doing these things. And so as a result, what I saw is deep fakes are just going to reinforce the narrative for whichever side you have. But
yeah, absolutely.
I digress from the political piece. What else can we talk about with social engineering and artificial intelligence? We've covered emails, we've covered deep fakes. I didn't know about polymorphic email. I just always thought about it as AI. So now I've learned a new way to bring in polymorphic into this. What else do you got?
You know what? Okay. So one of the things we're going to take a step back to earlier in this talk, Bryson. We're going to talk about that SE village again, the social engineering village. And a couple of years ago, they had a competition called the John Henry competition. I don't know if you saw that or you're familiar with it or not. But again, this is in the SE Village, social engineering. They get up in front of these people in a soundproof booth and they start vishing them. And what it is you get points for certain things. It's like a CTF, only you're live vishing these people, all right? And people work for months figuring out the pretext and the numbers to call. They're generally given like an industry and then eventually a company to actually call against. Well, this goes on. It's a big challenge. Cool stuff, right? Well, this John Henry challenge, it was a guy I know, Perry Carpenter, and another gal. They had put together this AI bot, and they did a humans versus AI voice phishing challenge. And so basically they went into the booth, Perry and this other gal, they went into the booth and they just kind of hit go. And it used a chat bot backed into, it was feeding off of either Claude or Chat GPT, depending on what he wanted. Some of them have faster response times. And then the output was going through 11 Labs, which is a deepfake audio generator as well. And so this basically a support chat bot was doing all this. And the premise was they were calling these places and troubleshooting some things and going through that and getting information like that. Perry and them, they just hit go and let the thing dial, and top to bottom, it was AI. Now, the challengers, they went into the booth, they made their calls, they were doing this stuff by hand. And technically, they say that the challengers won this because they got more points out of it, but barely, okay? What's shocking about it, and what really came to mind to me, and I think a lot of other people in that group, is Perry could have hit go 100 times at once versus that one person that had to have those skills to sit there and deal with that person and answer the questions and all of that right then and there. So the scalability of things like even vishing is huge these days. And this was like, I think it was either last year or the year before with the John Henry competition. I can tell you when that ended, the it was silence in the room. They could not believe what the AI had just pulled off, and it cost almost nothing. There is a cost to it, but it costs like 50 cents or something like that to do these calls. It was nothing.
And what do you know? KnowBe4 has a blog on the competition.
Oh, I didn't even realize we did that. Ha, no kidding. Damn, you are a Google master here, Bryson. You were rolling with it, man.
My
Yeah,
Google
it was
foo
cool.
is nonpareil.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but I mean that's what we got. I think we really got to think about that as security professionals. It's not just the quality of what's going on. Sure, the underlying scams are the same, just like, there was a Spanish prisoner scam before Nigerian prince. It was all that kind of stuff. It's been going on for years and years. That's all the same. The AI is going to make it even more believable, but the amount of attacks that we're going to see using this technology that would normally be very specific to high level targets and valuable targets are easily used against the low level people. And we have to think about that a little bit more. As security people, it's something that we're going to be facing, which is why I'm glad I'm digging a moat around my property here. I'm hoping to retire in about 5 years, and that's someone else's problem. Thanks for playing. It's I can't. I can't.
Considering all of my work in critical infrastructure, good luck still with your moat plan.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, indeed, indeed. I mean, I joke about that, but it's a hard thing that we're going to be facing here in the future. And a lot of it is going to be AI versus AI. And then we start talking about things like agents. Agentic, obviously, is exploding out there. Everyone's going to have it. I believe in the next year and a half, everybody in a company is going to have an AI agent monitoring their inboxes, answering those stupid little questions, or maybe even, things like Slack. You get somebody who messages in, "Hey, what time is that meeting again next week?" And you got to stop doing what you're doing and answer the email. You're going to have agents that are just going to jump in there and be like, "Oh, here it is." When they know these things, there's all these little efficiencies that are going to happen. I firmly believe agents are going to be crazy. The problem is agents are just people that can also be socially engineered through things like, prompt injection through emails and white space, or white text. You know what I mean? It's like all of this other stuff is going to be happening as well. And it's not just going to end up with social engineering the humans, but also all of these other tools and toys and efficiency builders that we think we're going to have within organizations.
So we're coming down on the hour here. Lot of topics covered.
Yeah.
What are the final thoughts you want to leave folks with?
I guess the final thoughts is it's not going to get any better. The cat's out of the bag. We got to think about it there, but also don't get discouraged because, like I've said a couple times, with social engineering, it ultimately is the same scams over and over again. It's just changing some of the things that we used to look at for tells. But I think we need to pay more attention to the actual ask or whatever's happening with that, more so than we did in the past. And I don't think it's a losing proposition. I do know a lot of people that are scared. They're very concerned about AI and how it's going to impact things. Yeah, it's definitely up in the game. Defenses are out there, though, that are also trying to counter that. And so we have tools in our toolboxes. But grand scheme of things, cybersecurity is going to be more important than ever in the near future. And a lot of it, please don't forget to train your people how to spot this crap. I mean, I work for a training company. Yes, I work for them because I believe in this too. We've got to help educate people so at least they can defend themselves against all this crap that's coming in. If we don't teach them some of this stuff, and I'm not talking about having to look in headers and stuff like that, but at least to follow their gut feelings and emotions on this stuff, you're going to have more trouble than we've had in the past. I don't see it going away or getting better.
Okay, well, as all good security talks, we are left filled with doom and a hopeless nature. and we're all fucked. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah,
You have
yeah.
successfully accomplished what every security talk is supposed to do, which is leave you feeling worse and dispirited.
Oh, I hope not. I really do hope that people listening to this understand. Yeah, but this is part of security. Is we're constantly going to be fighting this battle. It's not going to go away as long as they're making money like this. It's going to be a threat, and as long as nation states exist, it's going to be a threat. So, but we can do this. Let's band together. Let's work together, and we can do this, folks. Smile. Have a cold beer. That helps.
So join us on the next Unicorn Dispatch Live. We're only going to be doing one in July. I guess that's the closest I get to taking a break in this industry. It'll be on July 13th. So tune in for our next episode of Unicorn Dispatch Live. And Eric from Know Before, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
I'll stare awkwardly at the screen as it takes 10 seconds after I press
Yeah.
enter.